Welcome back to Girl, What Did I Just Read? The podcast where we read books by women and queer authors that have us questioning everything from plot twists to our taste in fictional men, and where we occasionally relive the books of our youth. Welcome back, Shaggy. And I'm Katie.
Hi.
After haunted apartments and creepy kids, we needed a break. So we're diving into the teenage chaos instead of Confessions of a Teenage Drama Queen by Diane Sheldon. Picture it, the horror of raging hormones, confused identity, the overwhelm of feeling and experiencing everything for the first time. Access to music, makeup, and knowledge in the pre-internet and social media era of cliques, jocks, nerds, weirdos, etc.
So today we are going to be diving into peak early 2000s teen Delulu energy. This was back when lip glosses were sticky and the belts were unnecessary and the drama was life and death, even though it absolutely wasn't.
We're talking ego. We're talking theater kid delusion. We're talking middle and high school power struggles that felt like Game of Thrones for teenagers.
And of course, we need to discuss the psychology behind female friendships because honestly speaking, 2000s era was movie after movie after movie, big commercial projects, all based on the intricacies of female friendships. Even I don't understand why do girls sometimes bond so closely like sisters and then sabotage each other like undercover CIA sleeper agents.
So grab your iced coffee or your protein drink, your sparkly flip phone, and your emotional support glitter pen because this episode is a whole journey. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I have to know. So this month was your pick. And I know that because again, we kept saying we did what episodes 1 through 4, right? Were kind of heavy, research heavy. We did horror last month, which we still found a lot to make heavy. So you wanted something like palate cleansing, brain bleach.
I don't know what it is about this November, but this November is not Novembering the way November is usually November for me. Like, I don't know. Is it just me or is this year's November a little less fun? Or maybe I'm like chronically online and I'm reading too much news and that's why I think November is not. So I'm a little confused, but anyway. Yeah, the idea behind choosing a lighter pick was that we were becoming too scholarly. And yeah, I wanted to like use less brain. I wanted to use 25% of my brain in trying to figure out this book, the themes of this book, and also enjoy the book without like feeling the weight of the 24-hour news cycle that we constantly have like on our faces. And I can't even imagine being a teenager in these times. If I had like TikTok and Instagram in front of me all the time, I don't know how like fried I would be. But reading this book was such a breath of fresh air. I mean, they used to listen to radio back then. That's so cute.
And
They
MTV was
used
still a
words
thing.
like Xeroxing. Exactly. MTV was a thing. And I recently read that MTV shut down after 44 years of operating. I was so
Yep, rest in
sad.
peace. It did just a couple weeks ago.
MTV is gone.
I don't,
Exactly. And now Teen Vogue is gone, which is
is it?
again another. Yeah, Teen Vogue is shutting down and it's just amalgamating with the larger Vogue enterprise. And now it's just going to be
Mm.
hidden behind some website, somewhere you need to click it. But the official publication of like in Teen Vogue, they shut that down and I felt so bad. I used to get most of my like late 2000s gossip from Teen Vogue. And that was like the avenue where you would go to like look for fashion or clothes. And it was surprisingly age appropriate. Yeah. And I'm kind of sad that it's gone. I'm also sad that MTV is gone because apparently my mother told me this that when I was like a toddler, my dad would like we would sit together and watch Madonna's music videos. And I think that's where I think that's where my interest in pop music like really blew up. I mean, come on, Madonna telling you Papa don't preach. I was being prepared to become a teenager.
Can't believe your parents let you watch those videos. It's like, I mean, I guess I kind of did. I wasn't always being monitored, but yeah, that's funny that they were actively watching them with you, which is great. And I'm a huge Madonna fan, especially 80s and 90s Madonna. Yeah,
How
I
did
love it.
you like going about with like such a how would I say, this is such an age appropriate IA book that I was kind of shocked to see innocence and kind of childhood. It was really 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 like such a cute book, and man, those times are good.
It was. I mean, so the book was written in what 1999, and then
Yeah.
they made it, which we can talk about, the film at some point, but they made it into a film that came out in 2004, right? I think Disney made it with Lindsay Lohan.
Yeah.
And it's funny because reading this and then watching that, because we both ended up watching the film as well. Again, I hadn't seen it in years. Probably I haven't seen it in probably, less than 20 years, but like I saw it like maybe a year or two after it came out. And even though I wasn't in high school at the time, I would have been in high school. I was in high school when the book was written. So when it came out in 99, I would have been either, kind of the end of eighth grade, which is middle school, or the beginning of, that was the first half of my freshman high school year. And it's so funny because like I didn't dress as outlandishly as our main character, but there's a lot of things that they allude to. And again, like the unnecessary belts and my gosh. And then I know later on you're going to talk about the fashion, but the low rise jeans. And like that was me. I did that like junior year. And I cannot believe that my mother let me out of the house. And that, Lindsay Lohan's got it, I think, towards the end of the movie. But it was fun. It was a blast from the past. It was nice to, even though, it was about, girls fighting and whatnot, it was still so wholesome because, I think what was it back
Yes.
then, most of us didn't even still have cell phones. I didn't get my cell phone until I was 16. And that's when more people started to get them. So that was what, 2003. So maybe like 2001, 2002, 2001, I think ish is when most teens started. It was more common to get cell phones because, our parents wanted to know where the heck we were. And now, I mean, there's elementary kids with cell phones. Anyway, it was nice. It harkened back to a more pure like time. Yes, it was still, well, no, the book was written pre 9/11. So yeah, it was pre 9/11. It was pre social media and Instagram and TikTok and all that. And it's just, yeah, we still had the teen drama. We still had the infighting, but I think it was not as bad as it probably is today because of, and again, we'll get more into that later, how
Yeah,
technology and social media has
I
really
think
affected.
maybe if I were like at that age, like say 16 during 1999, like early 2000s, maybe if I were in that kind of a situation, which this book, Confessions of a Teenage Drama Queen, if I were in the midst of a situation like how the plot of this book goes, I would think at that point of time that it's nasty the way the female friendship dynamics work over here and the main conflict that happens. But then the thing is, things have become so much nastier that now I like the nasty stuff. I think that nasty stuff was wholesome.
Yeah, looking back, it was wholesome for compared to now. I forgot. Did we introduce the book?
Now,
I know you just said it. Did
I
we?
think we should.
I can cut it and then put it back at the beginning. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So I wanted to ask you, Katie, how were you
Huh.
during high school? What kind of a teenager were you? What kind of a girl were you? What did you like? What was your personality like? Also, hobbies, interests, any crushes?
I was a theater kid as well. Not as dramatic as our main character Lola in Confessions of a Teenage Drama Queen, if we didn't already
Oh my
mention it.
God.
But yeah, I was a theater kid. I went to theater camp in middle school and then I went to a performing arts high school. So half my classes were acting and
Okay.
stage stuff and art and my main focus was theater. I was not as dramatic as her and I was not as deluded to think I
Gosh,
was
I did
actually
not
going to
know you
be
were
an
so
actor.
artistic.
Yep, yep, yep. Theater, a bit of musical theater. In senior year, I was the lead in the play that year, and then we did a huge musical, and I was in like the
Whoa.
chorus for that. I wasn't in musical theater. I was in what we call straight theater. I could I was good enough to be in the backup chorus, and I was prostitute number 2 in Les Mis. So it was fun. But
Okay,
yeah, and
mind
then
blown. I had no idea
what
that you
else?
were so much into theater.
Yeah, yeah, I was in, and it's funny because my teachers and my the students, but actually most of the teachers, it was kind of an unofficial, what do you call them, the what do you call this, the most likely to blah blah blah. I was most likely
Yeah, the
to,
next something.
yeah, what do they call, yeah, what most likely to become a TV anchor. So I
Oh, the
also took that as,
superlatives.
I probably
I
shouldn't,
think it's called,
yeah, superlatives. Yes, most likely to be a TV
I think
anchor. So
it's
I
called
kind of took, I mean, I could
superlative.
act,
Yeah,
but yeah. So I could act, but I realized that I did not.
that's
I
wonderful.
realized in senior year that I did not want to follow that because I just, at the time, our book takes place in New York City, part of it. I do not like New York City. Sorry. And I haven't been there in years. Maybe I need to go back. But my best friend in high school went to NYU for theater. And so I would go visit her once or twice a year. And then she stayed on a couple years after. So I would stay for like a week or so and just walk around the city and everything when she was in class. And I didn't want to move to LA. I have not been to LA proper, but I knew I wouldn't like it because back then that's all you had was New York or LA. And I did have a number of my classmates that went on, to go to one of those cities. And a few people made it and things, but it's tough. And, you're auditioning, you don't get paid. I wanted to go behind the camera and go into film, but I ended up chickening out of film school later on and I went to culinary school instead. So, but anyway, as a teenager, yeah, I was into, I mean, kind of weird like I am now, but I was definitely, I wouldn't say I was not in the popular crowd, but I was friends with everyone. You know what I mean? Like just, I didn't want to like stand out too much, but I guess I wasn't one of like the and I hate to say this, but these are the terms we used back then. The freaks, the goths, the dirt rockers, or the nerds. I wasn't one of those. Yeah, my camera's lagging. Wait, so what else? Yeah, I just pretty run of the mill and just weird, into weird stuff like I am now. And I was still into like all the spooky things, but I think I was pretty decent. And I was a good kid and a good student because I knew that I would be in trouble with my mother if I did not do well in school and, get scholarships and, and like paid tuition for college. So, yeah. How about you? Cuz you grew up like what? You're like 10 years behind me.
So, yeah, honestly speaking, the 2000s fashion that we see in the movie of Confessions of a Teenage Drama Queen, that kind of fashion slowly trickled into India by the late 2000s and 2010s. Yeah, I would say when the book came out, I mean, when the book came out, I was 6 years old. So by the time I was a teenager, I'll say like by the time I was 13, it was like 2006. Yeah, 2006 I was like 13 years old. And so yeah, I would watch a lot of these movies. I mean, so I mean back then, because you didn't have, firstly, like such easy access to internet for entertainment. Like I would have access to internet to like work on projects or like school reports, assignments, but otherwise you would use a PC only for like playing games. And I used to learn how to type. There was some software that would like teach you how to type like really fast. So
Oh,
I used to do like those kind of things on the computer. But then slowly when I like became 15, 16, 17, then like some of my friends whose parents like say worked outside India, they had access to like magazines like Teen Vogue. They had access to DVDs of shows like Gossip Girl, because I mean before streaming we just had like these channels like say Star World, and it would air season 1 of a show but it would not air season 2, then it'll randomly air season 3 but it will not air season 4. So yeah, the fashion was a little, it trickled a little later, but it did trickle. It trickled down really like it trickled down in a way where a lot of things like low-rise jeans were so popular, the belts, oh my god. And that owl necklace, the long owl
yeah.
necklace, god, that had everyone in a chokehold. That owl necklace, I mean, if you didn't have it, you were a loser.
And like gaudy costume jewelry. Remember like the necklaces with
Oh,
all the
yeah,
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 or layering
exactly.
necklaces.
So,
Yeah.
okay, how was I as a teenager? Honestly speaking, I was a very aloof kid. I was kind of like, mm, so in this book later on, we'll come to know that there are like these cliques, which are the born to wins, who are like always after, you know, winning, on to run, who are like intellectual, smart, good in school, and the independents. I think I became an independent in my later teenage years because I was a part of popular cliques, like I would say when I was 11, 12, 13, 14. But then I don't know what happened. It was like almost like it was like a light bulb went on in my head because I realized that because I was in these cliques, there were these unwritten rules that I had to conform to. And like I had to like, how do I say, reinforce the category I came under in the popular clique. So I was the smart one. I was the intellectual one. I was the sarcastic one. I was kind of bitchy as well. All of those things were appreciated. But yeah, I think it was either because of like some realization or because I used to actually read a lot and try to use my critical thinking skills as much as possible. I realized that being a part of clique is so tiresome. And these idiots, these idiotic classmates of mine, what I used to think, what the do they know? They are my age and they don't even read. And
Exactly.
they're not even good in like schoolwork. So I was like, who the are these people to like make unwritten rules and that I'm gonna follow them? So quite early on, in my teen years, I became an independent because I was like, Man, this is nonsense." And yeah, so I was aloof. I was independent. It really bugged my dad that I was an aloof kid. Like, I think he wanted me to like, I don't know, not be so like whatever. I don't care. Fine, I'll deal with it. Don't worry about it. I was a little moody as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was definitely moody because please, if you read Wuthering Heights when you're 13 years old, you will become moody. If you read Northanger Abbey when you're 14, 15, you will become moody. It's fun. So, yeah, I was aloof, independent, moody. There was not a lot of avenues of creative expression because in Indian schools, uniforms are mandatory, like
Mhm.
mandatory across the board. Schools do not allow you to wear what we would call civil clothes, like uniforms versus civil clothes. And you were allowed to wear civil clothes only on your birthday. And my birthday would always come up during a time when the holidays were going on. So I never got to really wear my civil clothes to distribute chocolates on the day of my birthday. And my hobbies were pretty all of my hobbies were very like they had a low barrier to entry. So like I had access to books, so I started reading a lot. I had access to art supplies, so I used to like sketch a lot and I used to draw a lot. Like if you see back here there's a swan. I actually sketched
Oh,
that.
awesome.
Yeah, I actually sketched that when I was, yeah, I think 15, when I was in 10th grade. And so I was really like into art. Theater is again not a thing in India. Like maybe, during an annual day celebration, there will be like a 10-minute skit kind of a play. But like actual productions, like theatrical productions of like Shakespeare or some other like famous playwright, we didn't have that kind of a thing. So otherwise, I would have definitely become a theater kid. Please. I had such a god complex, especially when I became aloof. I had such a god complex. I was like, everyone's a dumb. My classmates are stupid. Also, like by the time we hit 13, everyone started having crushes on each other. And I'm like, why are you having crushes on like the person you're sitting next to? It's so
Yeah,
gross.
that's funny.
I was like, cooties, be away from me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did not have any crushes throughout school, I will say. And one of the things about Indian schools as well, at least this was the way back in my time, till the 6th grade, guys would wear something known as, they would wear shorts, not like full trousers, like full-legged trousers. So till 6th, 7th grade, guys would wear these like uniform shorts. And in India, we call them half pant, okay? So they would wear this half pant. And my problem was that when I became 13, 14, 15, I'm like, I'm gonna date this guy who I've seen wearing a half pant. I was I was very critical. Yeah, I was like, I saw you as a
Oh my
baby
God.
wearing little shorts and running around. Yeah, running around with your chicken legs. And now because you're wearing full-legged trousers at the age of 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, I'm supposed to like fall in love with you. Yeah. I used to think adults are also idiots. Yeah, so basically I used to live a life of the mind, as I would call it.
Mhm.
And yeah, my interests, and I would say I was also friends with just like everybody. I didn't know how to like exactly. I didn't know how to follow the rules of the popular cliques. I used to get away with it because I was smart and I was like really sarcastic and I would like say biting things which people would want to avoid. Scorpio moon. Ha.
But also Sagittarius sun.
And I was in, oh yeah. How could I forget the Sagittarius? And back then
Mhm.
I knew I was a Sagittarius. This gave me next level main character energy. Knowing that I was a Sagittarius, somehow I was like, I'm lucky. I'm a philosopher. I'm an explorer. Nobody knows anything better than me because I actually go to the source and research and read it. So, I mean, just knowing as a kid that I'm a Sagittarian, I was like, I'm God. Who are any of you? And I secretly still carry that personality, but I humble myself. Like I humble myself. No,
Yeah.
yeah. Lagun, it's okay. It's everybody's first time on earth. You don't know everything.
Yeah.
Great philosophers like Socrates have said they don't know everything. So yeah, you also kind of don't know everything and it's okay. And I was into sports, yeah. I would play everything. I would participate in everything. I would get into any and every kind of competition. I used to love like getting a chance to get away from school. So I would participate in like quiz competitions, art competitions, just about everything. I was like, let me leave these people behind and like also, yeah, Indian schools, you can't get out. Like, it's a jail. It's like a jail system, like a little
Mhm.
prison system. That's how Indian schools are. You can't get out like during lunch or you can't like skip a class. You can't do any of that. You're locked inside the school. You're locked inside the school in your uniform from 8:30 to 3:30 and that's your life entirely. And yeah, I would say that despite my god complex and like my main character energy and like my disdain for the masses, I will say my general disdain for the masses, what I had learned during childhood was that the way to get your way in a country like India, having brown parents, is to be good at academics. Things people will let slide just because you're good at academics. Oh my god, if I was bored in class, I would be so disruptive. But I would never be like thrown out of the class or like punished or anything like that because like I was consistently like I would try to be in the top 5, top 10 in my class. Because if you're like a first ranker, then it's too much spotlight and too much like people expect too much from you if you're number one. But if you're number two, three, four, five, six, then you're good enough. It's like you're good enough, but again, the spotlight is a little lesser on you. So yeah, I was just a downright when I wanted to be. And I got away with it because I knew the way to hack the system was to just be good in academics because that's all the teachers care about and that's all your brown parents care about. I mean, I'm saying brown parent, but I mean one parent of mine specifically. Shout out, Dad.
So I will let you take the summary from the fantastic late 90s, early 2000s book that we read for this month.
Okay, this amazingly, fabulously wholesome, laugh out loud, hilarious book that we read. Oh my God. It soothed my soul reading a wholesome book like this. And how is this book wholesome? Let's bring our protagonist to the table. So, this book starts off and it is about the life of a teenager, and her name is Lola Sepp. Now, Lola Sepp is just, let's say, she's one of the most confident teenagers I have ever read in a book. Like, I have not seen any teenager be firstly confident, but also like okay with the fact that there will be obstacles in life, but I will get through it. Like, I kind of like that devil may care attitude. So, anyway, we come to Lola. Now, Lola was born and raised in New York City. She is a typical New York kid who loves the idea of just walking borough after borough. Is that what it's called? Blocks after blocks. She loved the idea of like Central Park and Broadway and Times Square, and she's just your typical cool, artistic, very unabashedly herself character. The amazing thing is that when Lola is uprooted from New York and then moved into the suburbs, which is New Jersey, by her mother. So the idea behind them moving to the suburbs was so that the kids would have more of a less city life like environment. Like they'll be able to play outside and bike outside and all of that. Lola's mom, Karen, she moves them to the suburbs, and now her world is crashing out right now. So after moving to New Jersey, Lola is having a massive, massive crash out because she's like, I was the main character in New York City. Now I'm in the middle of nowhere where people don't have culture, where the idea of art, culture, beauty, aesthetics, anything intellectual, like none of that really exists. So she's fully depressed. She's like, my mom's ruined my life. Everyone's ruined my life. They've brought me to the New Jersey suburb in the dead end of nowhere. And this place is called Delwood, the suburb where they move. And she calls it Deadwood. So teenagey. Like I would do that too. I mean, I still do that. But that's so cool. So she moves to Deadwood and she enrolls into the new high school. Now, we all know what it is like changing schools and being the new kid. I can tell you because I changed 5 schools like throughout my life. But the only difference was that I liked changing schools because being in the same environment with the same people, you know how they say familiarity breeds contempt? So that's what would happen to me when I became too familiar with my surroundings. Then I would be like, are these people? They don't know anything. So I think, yeah. So I think a constantly changed environment kind of like it helped me broaden my horizons, and it helped me understand that the world is bigger than just a school system, or say like it's just one part of a really long life that you're going to have. So now Lola is the new student, and she is so unabashedly herself. She dresses the way she wants to dress, like, and also she's a very like literary theater kid. Like she loves Shakespeare. Throughout the book she's quoting Hamlet, she's quoting Macbeth, she's quoting Romeo and Juliet. I mean, girl is well read, girl is really
That
well
she,
read.
yes, I will say that
She's
that
into
was really funny. All the like clapbacks to Shakespeare. And I mean, I was reading some of that stuff back then, but this character, I think for her age, is a very mature, well read young woman.
I think that's why I was kind of able to I was able to parallel the god complex that she has and like what I kind of had, and I can understand why that comes about. It's just something that happens during your teenage years. I don't know why. Maybe whatever. But anyway, Lola is really well read. Like she's read Gone with the Wind. I had a Gone with the Wind phase when I was 14. I was like Scarlett O'Hara. Oh my God, nobody has
Oh my
gumption like
God.
Scarlett O'Hara. Of course, I didn't know about US Civil War and all of that. Like we were not taught all of these things in like our history high school. So I learned about the US Civil War through Gone with the Wind. Otherwise, I would have not known about it for quite a while. But yeah, she reads Gone with the Wind. She reads Wuthering Heights. When she's in like a dark mood, she wears dark clothes. And that was again one thing that I could draw a parallel from, because I mean, in schools, you wear uniforms. So if you're sad or if you're happy, like, doesn't matter. You're in your uniform and you're looking as bad as everyone else looks in that uniform. But in my like corporate jobs, when I have a lot of work and when I am pissed with life, I do wear all black during a week. And I read her doing that and I'm like, woman, how are you doing the same stupidity that I do and that I continue to do as an adult? I think that's why this book, like, it uplifted my spirits so much. I felt so validated by like the silly things that she does, because even I do these silly things for, I don't know, kicks, for fun. Okay, so she gets into the new school. She's the new girl, but Lola thrives in attention. Like throughout the book, she even mentions that she loves going to school because where would you find a better audience than 40 students and one teacher stuck together in a room for an hour? She's like, the world's the stage and I'm an actor. And for her, I mean, it's a good thing that she was so depressed that she was moving to New Jersey. But when she actually started settling down, I like how she started getting a different perspective of what she could do in the suburb, in Delwood. And I like the fact that when her perspective shifted, she was like, Delwood is an empty stage. Nobody knows me over here. I can write my own script. And yes, when I used to change schools, I used to feel that too. That nobody knows me, I will just make up one personality. Though my true personality would then seep in, but I always felt excited by the idea that, like, this is a new setup. Now I can do whatever I want to do with it. And yeah, I love her positive nature. She spins everything that's kind of in her life. And I mean, of course, she's a sheltered, reasonably privileged girl. But any kind of obstacles in her way, she just like spins it in such a cheerful and uplifting way. I'm like, yeah, man, I used to be like you. I should go back to being like you. I've become too existential as an adult. Yeah. So now one of the first thing that Lola does is make a new friend. And the friend is Ella Gerard. Now, Ella is our, how would I say, how would you describe Ella?
I mean, I wouldn't call her a nerd per se. I think she just flies under the radar. What I do like about Ella and what Lola liked in Ella was that at least Ella has her own style. It was vastly different than Lola's, but it was very like, I don't want to say, I'd say retro, but it was kind of like a little more old fashioned, but like she owned it. It didn't seem like her mom made her dress that way. That's how she chose to. So I think that Lola saw a kindred spirit in Ella because even though Ella was different in ways, she saw a lot of similarities in herself. Ella wasn't striving to be part of the popular group. I think Ella was just, there cruising along in early high school. And yeah, they clicked pretty quickly. And in the book, we get to hear Lola talk often about how much she doesn't like, or like kind of ragging on, Lola ragging on about Ella's clothes. But then I think she like appreciates it too because she has her own sense of style. She has her own sense of self, even though Ella is a wallflower for sure. And I think in a bit of a way, Lola feels like a bit of a Pygmalion, also a bit of a what's Gus and I should know this Henry Higgins in that she can bring Ella out of her shell a bit, somewhat like the play that they're doing in the book, which is Pygmalion, which is the original source work for the musical My Fair Lady. And I know we'll get into that. Anyway, yeah, long story short, they're very alike in some ways and they're very different in some ways, and they play off each other well. Whereas Lola is very much, I would say, gregarious. She's very definitely, what was it? Definitely an extrovert. Ella's an introvert. And I would say kind of keeps to herself and go with the flow, but I mean, she's not a doormat, but where one of them lacks, the other one has those qualities and vice versa, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
yin and
The
yang.
way I think of Ella, yeah, exactly. I mean, when I was reading like about Ella, I was like, I wish I had a boyfriend like Ella. I would really like one. She gives such a Virgo quality and a good Virgo quality, not the nagging, constantly self-critical kind of a. She's like very practical, pragmatic, intelligent, but she balances like feelings and logic. She balances relationships and individuality. So the main connecting glue between the two girls, Lola and her new friend Ella, is a band. It's a boy band and it's called Siddhartha. Why is it called Siddhartha? I don't know. Like, Siddhartha is the name of Buddha. Are they trying to appropriate like Eastern mysticism? Like,
I do think
let's
they
call
were,
our
yes.
band Siddhartha, even though we know nothing about Buddhism. We know like
Yeah.
we haven't, but like let's.
Wait, I
It's such a
forgot. In the book was it because okay, in the movie it was Sid Arthur, which was a play on Siddhartha, but I forgot. In the book
yeah.
was it Siddhartha? Oh, okay, yeah. And then the movie, I think the movie didn't want to be so appropriate, culturally appropriative, so they called the band Sid Arthur, which that was funny. That's very funny. But yeah, like they're a boy band. I
Yeah.
mean, more of like not like Backstreet Boys boy band, but they were more of an alternative, where they played instruments and things. So maybe trying to be like the new age, the new version of the Beatles, in their
Yeah.
what was it? And I'm terrible with the history of the Beatles, but when in the 70s when they went into Eastern mysticism and got into drugs, maybe this band was trying to like copy off the Beatles, 20 plus years later. I don't know. And that's why they chose the name. And I was going to talk to you about the name as well, because I'm like, isn't that like an Indian, like god or something?
Yeah, I can understand. I think back then there was this idea about India that, you can come here and you can become a yogi and you can find yourself through meditation. I'm like, please, I'm an Indian. I've not found myself through yoga or meditation. I haven't gone to any mountain to meet any monk. I'm like, look at practical Indians. We don't do that. We might practice yoga, we might like practice meditation, but it's not like, the cure all that the way that it used to be projected. Like you would like, get some big epiphany, your life will change entirely. No, that was all like a fantasy, this oriental fantasy that was like created by Hollywood,
White
I
people.
would say.
Yes. Well, that was a big thing. Yeah. And even in the early 2000s, in the getting into the 2000s, it was the whole thing about like, yeah, all these white people going over there to learn with yogis and to become enlightened, and then they would come back here and start cults. So they've been doing it since the 60s. White people have been from the States and the UK been going over
Yeah.
there learning all this stuff, then calling themselves like, you know, like, oh god, like
Gurus.
yogi this or guru this or bhagava this. And luckily they've stopped, because I think some of them have realized, the ones that are with it have realized, okay, this is cultural appropriation. Anyway, it's been happening for years. So that's what I assume that this band was doing. It's kind of the same thing.
Well, we have losers like Jay Shetty who are still appropriating the whole monk culture. You, Jay Shetty. Oh, whatever. So anyway,
That's funny.
Ella and Lola are glued together because they absolutely love this band Siddhartha. And there is the lead of Siddhartha. His name is Stu Wolf. Let's remember him because he's going to be a very important character. Now let's go back to the high school environment. Lola's new. She's made a new friend. She has started attending her classes. She is as creative with her clothes as she can be. She's as creative with the way she can talk as she can be. And lo and behold, we have our villain who enters the story. Her name is Carla Santini. Carla Santini is the typical, stereotypical mean girl that you have seen in any movie between 2000 to 2012, I would say. Carla Santini is the brand of like Regina Georges. Like they're just There's just different versions of each other in different years and in different high schools. So Carla Santini is this like super rich, super sophisticated. Her dad is a lawyer and he is a media lawyer who works with the band Siddhartha. That is also another thing that we need to remember. So Carla, she's really affluent, super privileged. She is sophisticated, refined, elegant. Nothing that I would think a teenager should be, but okay, sure, why not? And she wears these expensive designer clothes. She is the popular girl. Everybody like wants to be her. Everybody wants to either, if you're a guy, if you're a guy, you want to get together with her. If you're a girl, you want to be her. So Carla Santini like literally rules the social structure of Deadwood High School. Now, when Lola and Carla come across each other, there's immediately this sense, this kind of tension that you can kind of understand. And this kind of tension happens when there are like say two leads in a story. Like both of them are trying to be the main character. Lola wants to be the main character in like a more individualistic sense. Like I'm gonna she is like the main character in the sense that I'm going to be a great actor. Nobody can stop me. No obstacle can come my way. I might be as depressed as Hamlet, but I'm going to get through this. So, yeah, Lola has that kind of main character energy. And Carla Santini's main character energy is that everyone should be under my nose.
Real quick about the two. So I feel like they're two alphas, right? And they immediately can sense that, but especially Carla. Carla can sense it right away from Lola because I think didn't Carla like she comes in the classroom or something happens and Lola's introducing herself to the class and Carla says something kind of nasty or backhanded, and the way Lola handles it is really well. And Carla can tell this girl is not, I'm not going to be able to keep this girl under my thumb. She's not going to bow down to the queen. This is a threat. And that's where everything started because Lola's confident and she wasn't worried about starting, she wasn't happy about it, but she wasn't worried about starting a new school. And so, yeah, they could smell they could sniff each other out.
Also, Carla has been in the same, like, I think the same neighboring schools of like the Delwood suburb. So I think she has not seen a competitor. She has not seen someone who like can meet her eye to eye and be like, yeah, let's go outside. Let's remove our earrings and let's meet at the parking lot. So
That's funny.
yeah. So, yes, Carla is a little more shook by the fact that there is this new person who does not want to be in her clique. Carla actually, she can sense that maybe if Lola and I work together, we could literally rule the high school in a completely different way, where they would be like the power forces. But Lola refuses to be in Carla's clique because, and this is the amazing thing about Lola, as delusional as she is, as much of a god complex as she has, as much of like equity that she places upon herself, her personality, her amazingness, she is actually pretty grounded for a teenager. Like, she understands what actual friendships mean, she understands what loyalty means, and she's able to see through the facade of what is actually not real. And the whole thing is the facade of this high school environment where you're either popular or you're not popular. Like, Lola's like, what is all of this? I'm amazing and I forget about everything else. And now that I have a best friend, Ella, who is intelligent, practical, smart, uh, just everything that can help Lola kind of be more down to earth. Yeah, Lola's like, I'm not gonna be in Carla's, with the minions. I don't want to be one of Carla's minion. And why should I be one of Carla's minion? I'm going to be like the alpha in my field. So the main tension that arises between Carla and Lola is with regard to the theater in their school. So their school is going to produce a play which is called Pygmalion. Pygmalion is a very, very old play. It's written by George Bernard Shaw. And It's very inappropriate, so please don't read it. It's stupid. It's written by some rando white man.
Well, that's why
Yeah,
I
it's
was
written
wondering
by
why they were
some.
doing it for their high school show. Like doing, I can understand doing My Fair Lady as a musical, but Pygmalion's, I think, way too much for young high schoolers. I don't know.
I think in 1999 they didn't really like think so much. I feel that. Like the idea of what was appropriate, not appropriate, censored, not censored, like the lines were a little blurred, I think. Yeah. Or maybe the author thought, like maybe the author was writing, of course she's trying to write through the mind of a high schooler, but maybe she she kind of put her adult self as well in parts of the book. Maybe that's why Pygmalion was
Yeah.
chosen, but for some reason Pygmalion was chosen. So the main like rivalry between Carla and Lola is to get the lead character, is to secure the lead character in this play. So they have auditions, and Lola is like, she is just so dramatically cute. She when she auditions, she puts on these different accents. She's like very, like, "Oh, don't do this to me," kind of a person. She's like, she has a flair, and she loves acting, and she is so like solidified on the idea that she wants to be an actor and she will become one. And oh God, I love that kind of unabashed confidence that people have. So, and behold, of course, Lola gets the lead. I mean, why wouldn't she? She can put on accents, act, she can overact, she can react, she can do everything. And she's very good at like memorizing lines. She's very focused in the theatrical world. So naturally, she gets the lead, and Carla is pissed off. Carla is crashing out. She's like, how did this girl get the lead when I am the lead in this high school? Like, how could she do that? And now this is what happens. Like, you poke the bear, like Lola poked the bear, called Carla Santini too much. And now Carla's like, "Arr, I'm gonna get you."
Yeah, that's true. Because Lola doesn't back down. And Lola does, what I like about Lola is that she does not seem to internalize any of the backhanded things, the mean
Yeah.
comments, just the sabotage from Carla Santini.
I know. I just to add to that, I love that about
Yeah.
Lola as well. How she just does not internalize any bullshit that the external world is giving to her, because her like moral compass, her radar is like so focused and not conflicted, that she like understands that opinions are opinions, and I also have an opinion, but for me my opinion matters more. It's not my business to know what other people like are thinking, doing, talking about me. And yeah, I just like, she's just so cool. She's cool, and she has like this resilience and strength and fortitude to be like, yeah, fine. Life will throw things at me. But what do all great actors do? They rise to the occasion. They look past failure, they
Mhm.
look past rejections, and they rise to the occasion to become the best that they can be and to put themselves into their work and their performance. Like, she has these little philosophies which help her along the way into actually being a good person at the end of the day. Like, throughout the book, we'll see that she has her own way of manipulating and getting her way. But deep down, the fact that she is a good person, that does not like, in no way is the opinions of the outside world is not able to shake the goodness that she has innately within her. And that's why, like, bang on, amazing character.
She doesn't ever lower herself to Carla's level. She doesn't ever try to attack Carla. She doesn't ever, I mean, she'll snap back, but she doesn't ever actively go after Carla like Carla goes after her. And I really like, when my daughter's a little older, I'd like for her to read the book, and I need to have her watch the movie with me, because I think that the character is a pretty good role model for a young teenager,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I fully agree. Like, there is something so like, there's just something so age appropriate about this book that it shocked me. Like, I was like, why is this not sounding outdated or regressive? Or it was just so balanced in its approach. And in the best way, it was PG 13 and under. Y- there should be some level of like being sheltered from what the adult world will throw up on you and offer you. So while we have the play rivalry going on, that is one plot point. The parallel plot point that's going on is that the boy band Siddhartha, they are breaking up. I mean, like, I can understand that a little bit because when One Direction broke, like, I was like, how can how can my favorite Zayn Malik like just leave to pursue a solo career? What does a solo career even mean? Like, why is he leaving?
What
So,
has he done since
like, I
besides
felt,
like have a baby with a former Girls Aloud member from Britain? I don't know.
yeah, I
You
mean,
know, like he
what
hasn't
has
really
he
had a
done?
solo career much.
Not too much of it. I would say not as big as Harry Styles. Like, out of all
Yeah.
the One
And then
Direction
Liam.
members, yeah,
Yeah.
I would say out of all the One Direction members, it's like Harry Styles, Liam, and then Zayn, and then the
Uh-huh.
rest. But Zayn Malik was the one that was like caused the breakup of the band. And like throughout history, throughout pop culture, the breaking up of bands has been such a big deal. Like, for example, like you were talking about the Beatles and how this band Siddhartha is kind of a reflection of the ethos and the aesthetics and the vibe of the Beatles. I think there's a parallel here. Like the way the Beatles broke up, Siddhartha is also breaking up as a band, and now everyone is pursuing their solo career.
Uh-huh.
And let me tell you, in a teenage girl's life, if she's into a band and they are breaking up, and that's big news. That's actually like super big news. And it can feel earth shattering as well, because as a teenager, when you listen to like music and it resonates with you and you feel seen at a time when you're mostly not feeling like you're being seen truly, like you're kind of in a tussle with your parents, you're kind of like just figuring yourself out. So music is like actually like a big sanctuary that a lot of teenagers and adults go to and seek like safety and security under. So considering music, and also because music is such a big part of pop culture, like breaking up of bands is this plot point, that the fact that a band is going to break up, I mean, I was like so cute. Like, I used to care about bands breaking up once upon a time. So now, because Siddhartha is going to break up and everyone's going to pursue their solo careers, there's going to be a final concert and an after party, which is going to be thrown by Siddhartha. Their last gig as a united band. And of course, Lola and Ella, who are like diehard Siddhartha stans, they want to go to the concert and they want to go to that after party. And Lola is like one of those girls who, really wants to like dress up for the concert. And, she has that kind of fantasy, which I have read about a lot, that, like I'm so unique that Harry Styles will look at me from the stage and he would like, he would like want to reach out to me, and he would be mesmerized by this one person that's me amongst a sea of crowd. And I get that anticipation of like wanting to go to a concert.
Yeah.
I mean, sadly in India, sadly in India, are like not a big thing. So I never had the experience of being like, oh my God, let me like go to a concert. Recently, there is like Ed Sheeran came and some like, but all of this is like happening much after my teenage years. So like now I'm not even interested in going to a Ed Sheeran concert. So yeah, now she, like Ella and Lola, they have to come up with a plan on how they are going to go to the concert, and they also want to get into the after party. And lo and behold, who is going to sour their whole plan? Carla Santini, because she is bored. She is bored. She knows that if Lola is able to like shake her pedestal a little bit, she might topple down. Like the government that she has, the authoritarian government that she has set up in her high school, it will all collapse in front of her eyes if she doesn't one up Lola in everything. So because Carla's dad, media lawyer of Siddhartha, Carla, during one lunch break, she knows that Ella and Lola are really into Siddhartha. So to one up Lola, Carla's like, oh, my daddy is a media lawyer and he works with Siddhartha and he got like invites and tickets to the concert and the after party. And I'm going to be going. And now she's like boasting and she's like bragging about the fact that she has these like connections and how she could like get into something as prestigious as the last concert of Siddhartha and their after party as well. So now that Lola knows that Kala Santini has an in into this concert, she doesn't want to like get defeated by Carla. You can sense as the book progresses, Lola slowly starts getting a little more and more and more and more obsessed with what Carla's doing, what Carla's thinking, what's going to be the consequences of the actions that Lola takes with respect to Carla. But again, Lola, who's not going to be defeated and who wants to go to that concert, she, of course, lies her way. She doesn't call it lying. She calls it exaggerating. No, she calls it embellishing the truth because the truth is so boring. And when you can like live a fantastical life, why would you want to stick to the nitty gritties of reality, which is so dull and so mundane and so just so not happening? So she lies and tells Carla Santini that she has tickets and an invite to the party as well. Now, Lola and Ella have to figure out firstly, they don't have concert tickets. Two, there is no way they are going to get into the after party because they don't have a private invitation for it. But Lola, she's not going to be defeated. She's like, I'm going to figure out a way. Ella, you just be with me. We'll figure out a way. We'll somehow crash the concert. We'll somehow crash the after party. This is what people do. They crash celebrity things all the time. So Lola starts slowly devising a plan on how to firstly lie to her parents and Ella's parents. The fact that they are going to just go to New York and in the middle of the night attend a concert as like 16-year-old kids and then go to an after party where there are going to be adults and alcohol. So now there are two parts to this plan, the lying to the parents part and then not lying, devising a plan on how to get into the concert and the after party. One part of the plan goes easy, lying to the parents. They are like, I'm in her house, she's in my house, peace. Oh. Have you ever done that though? Have you like gotten into any kind of like
No. Well, once I was so scared to do anything bad, but I didn't do anything till I was 18, 19. The summer after I graduated high school, I was just for that summer dating a guy like I think a year younger than me, a year or two younger than me, and he wanted to hang out and it was late and I was, my curfew after I graduated was finally midnight. After I was like, had been 18 for a
okay?
while, then I was like, my mom was like, oh, but you have to be home by midnight. So it was after midnight. So I snuck out of my window and he came and picked me up in his van and we didn't have anything to do because we couldn't go to a bar or anything. So we went to Walmart and walked around Walmart at like 4 a.m. It was so much fun. I felt like such a badass. I was such a rebel.
No, I was thinking about it. Honestly speaking, if I wanted to do something, I would actually just go and ask my parents. And I used to always feel that what I ask is so reasonable, then why would you not say yes to a very reasonable thing? Like, I would be open to being dropped, being picked up, all of that. Like, I was fine with it. I was just not fine with a no. Yeah, this is the Lola attitude. I'm not going to take
Uh-huh.
no for an answer. I'm going to be persuasive because I'm a Sagittarian philosopher.
I was gonna
How can
say yes, as a fire sign, I can see that for you.
So I remember like I was 15 years old, 14 or 15, and I had like a massive crush on this guy who was from another school. Again, I had a crush on a guy from another school because I had not seen him in a half pant. Had I seen him in a half pant, sorry, you're my sibling. If I've seen you in half pant, you're my sibling. I have grown up with you. you can have no romantic potential with me whatsoever. So I had this massive crush on this guy. And I was like, yeah, we just wanted to go to like this one mall and just hang out a little bit because there was a horror house in that mall and the horror house was like a really new thing. So we wanted to go just to see what the horror house was. And at that time, mall culture was big, like late 2000s, 2010s. The mall culture in India was like just developing. So people were like hyped to go to the mall. Like, what do you do when you go out? You go to the mall, you go to the food court, you go and shop a little bit. You window shop. I don't hear the words window shopping anymore. So we used to do that. Now, I, like the brutally honest Sagittarian that I am, I told my mom that I want to meet this person. And she knew him. Like, we were all like in the same set of schools. And I think he had even come home. Somehow, like, my mom knew who this dude was. And I was like, I have a crush on him. I want to go meet him at the mall. She's like, yeah, okay. But like, we'll have to ask your dad. My dad blew his lid, okay? He's like, boy. And come on, Indian brown parent back in late 2000s, 2010s. It's like boys, pregnancy, boys, like Indian. It's so funny, like how exaggerated. Like, this is why I have so much grace for my parents as well, even though like they were like blowing their lid off now and again because of my honesty. Because I was like, yeah, it's your first time on earth as well. Like, how would, if I were not given an opportunity as a 15-year-old to mix with girls and guys and like have crushes and date? So I was like, yeah, I mean, like, if the first contact that you had with a girl was in an arranged marriage setup, like, what do you even understand about dating? So I had grace for the fact that they might not understand, but I was like, I'm being honest. Firstly, I could have lied and said that I want to go meet like some girlfriend of mine. I could have lied, but I'm like, why should I lie? And this is the same attitude that Lola has as well, that lying is just like lying, committing crime. It's just too stressful and repetitive. Might as well not do it. But like, fine. This is how you tame your parents. Slowly, slowly, you like up the rebelling. And that's how you like get them to your. That's how I
Yeah.
used to think that I used to think that all the anguish that I'm giving them, that I'm giving my parents, it's character development. This is how they will become progressive. And I would always say, I'm doing this so that you can become progressive, so that you don't get dementia when you're older.
Oh my gosh. I hope that they listen to this. This is hilarious. It's gonna be so funny in like, say, 20 years if my daughter's doing the same and like, oh, I did this to my mom and manipulated her this way. And I'll be like, kid, I knew what you were doing the whole time.
Yeah. So the thing was, I actually caused like a lot of fights in my house because I just didn't want to lie. I wanted to do what I wanted to do responsibly, but you can't say no to me. Like, how dare you say no to a reasonable request, which is like safe, secure, you're accountable to everyone. It's a transparent thing. I'm like, how dare you say no? This was the teenage rebel inside of me. And I went on many dates with the guy.
Nice.
Yeah. So anyway, this was like oh, my dad is going to have PTSD watching this episode. He's going to be like, oh, this girl is just like this girl is dressing me down.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I can't wait. He's probably glad those days are over.
Yeah, I think he is glad that those days are over. I think he's glad that he is able to like better manage similar situations now rather than how he used to be able to do it back then. But also, my parents, I feel like they were so young. Yeah. I was born when my parents were like 23 and 25. So they were
Wow.
like children who had kids. And this was okay. Also, because maybe I felt like the age difference between me and my parents was like typically lesser than what it usually is. I used to see them sometimes at my level. Like, this is why I was unable to hear a no. I was like, you don't have a better argument. How can you say a no to me?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh.
So yeah, these are the stories. Shout out, Dad.
Yeah.
I hope
Yeah,
I've
right.
given you a lot of character development. I hope I've made you super progressive. You're not going to get dementia ever because I've made your brain exercise so much on my behalf.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait to hear his reaction. That's funny. That is funny. Yeah, I do not. Yeah, I won't let my daughter listen to this episode just because I don't want her getting any of this in her head before she's a teenager. You know. Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
You should let your teenager develop their own tactics. That's how like their personality
Oh
develops.
God, I don't know. I mean, I was manipulative enough, I think, in my way, but she is too. I mean, I can clock it now, and she has her ways of, she thinks she's slick right now, but her dad and I know what's up, and I know what's up, but I bet you she'll try to develop that a little more to try to get under the radar. Anyway, it's funny. We left off where they were trying to get concert tickets and then they couldn't because they were sold out. And so they're like, well, screw it. Lola said we can buy them from scalpers. They end up taking the train from New Jersey into the city, which is not uncommon at all. I mean, I don't know, maybe like an 45-minute hour train ride. A lot of people do that commute regularly. They'll live in New Jersey and commute into New York City. And, both of them lying to their parents about where they are. Oh, but what the thing was is Lola wanted to look more adult so she could like sneak into the party. She wanted to look older. So what she does is she decides there's a beautiful dress for the finale and the play that she's in, Pygmalion at school. She decides that's the dress that she wants because, someone made the comment she looks older or she thinks she looks, like 20 in it. And so she got her kind of friend, kind of crush guy, Sam, to help her. He knows how to pick locks. I wouldn't call him a bad boy. I know we haven't talked about him yet, but he's one of the side characters where you're like, well, like maybe there's something going on with those two because Sam likes Lola and he looks up to her because he respects her because she stands up to Carla Santini.
And he
And
also
so,
appreciates her originality, I think.
yes, yes. And don't you want a
Because,
man like that? That's great. Or a
yeah,
person
and
like that.
he's like, again, the wholesome thing about this book that the kind of maybe romantic interest, Sam Creek, he is also such a wholesome character. Like, he reads as a true high school boy who, is he's kind of trying to be cool, but he's also a good guy, like deep inside. And he likes like creativity and originality. And yeah, like, I think he was a very like, pretty well written character. And in the movie as well, I liked the guy who played Sam Creek just because he looked like a 16, 17-year old. I was like,
He
yeah,
did.
I was like, yes, you are what you are claiming to be. And in that entire movie, I think everyone looks very like 16, 17, 18,
Age
not like,
appropriate.
yeah. And that's why even like this movie was like such a throwback to a time when things weren't so adulted, like adulting and like trying desperately to seem mature or something. I think
Yeah.
also like over sexualization, over objectification, maybe too much like violence, graphics, gore.
Mhm.
I don't know, maybe like, yeah, like I just feel like some of that, naivety and innocence is sort of lost because of maybe too much information.
Yeah. It was like the opposite of Euphoria, basically. I know. I haven't seen
Wow.
it. I know. So this is like the opposite of that. But yeah, so she decides that she wants to not steal, but borrow the dress from the locked costume room. So Sam helps her. Sam unlocks it. Sam sneaks in there and gets it for her. So she brings the dress. They get ready on the train. Exciting, exciting. And then, they can't get any tickets from scalpers. So, and I feel so bad because we were supposed to record last weekend. I finished this book about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. But then
They
I just
went
watched
to,
but then the movie's different than the book
yeah.
too.
No, in the book they go to this store called Tickets Galore. Is that the ticket
Yeah.
master of that generation?
Yes. Well, yeah, they couldn't call it Ticketmaster. So yeah, they went to Tickets Galore and they couldn't get the tickets. But that was before
Yeah.
before this date. And Carla Santini saw them. She's like, "Oh, were you there buying tickets because you don't already have them?" And they're like, "No, we were just over here." But yeah, so then they
Shopping.
try to go scalp the tickets. They can't. Then they're walking around and what is it? They find the lead singer, Stu Wolf, like drunk in some alley, right?
Yes. So what happens is that they go to the concert because they don't have
Mhm.
tickets. They are not able to like sneak in. And when they try to sneak in, like Ella's able to get in into the entrance of the concert, but like Lola's left behind and she gets caught by a bodyguard who like throws both of them outside. So concert plans cancelled because they are literally outside on the street, pouring rain in New York City. Their clothes are completely wet, sodden. They are in heels. Mind you, they are in heels because they wanted
Mhm.
to look like sophisticated, refined, modelly adults. So in that rain, Lola gets the brilliant idea that fine, the concert plan hasn't gone great, but what we can do is we can crash the after party that Siddhartha is holding at a private residence, and it's somewhere in a place called Soho in New
Mhm.
York City.
Mhm.
That's supposed to be like a very artsy place. Is it a very artistic, like?
Yeah. Or like back then it was, especially. I mean, and I haven't been to New York in a long time, the different boroughs, but yeah, Soho was very artsy, and that's where like a lot of famous people live or lived, where it was Soho.
So, yeah, they're gonna crash the after party. Now, they kind of have an address, but remember, guys, this was before GPS. This was before navigation. This was when you had to like open that thing called a papery map with its creases and like, so, yeah, let's remember this was like during those times when you had to figure things out yourself by applying yourself a little more. So they sort of know the address, but they are like rambling around in Soho, just like going here and there, sometimes in circles. Sometimes they think they're in the right direction. But Lola sees Carla Santini's BMW passing them by. And she's like, Carla Santini has an invitation to the after party. Of course she's going there. Let's follow the car. And both of them start chasing after the car, and they reach the door, the private residence where the party is being held. Now they try to get in again. Lola's like, oh my god, my friend is really sick. She's like dying. Please let us like have a phone call. Again, those times where you could like, I guess, knock on a door and be like, I need to call because I don't have a cell phone.
Landline. Yeah.
I know what, like, I mean, this is how community is made when you're like forced to interact with each other. Now, because like
Yeah.
I have a phone, I feel even more like it's so easy to be like detached from little human interactions that you could have. But anyway, besides the point. Yeah. So they try to get in. The bodyguard's like, no, guys, get lost. You look like kids. He's literally like, you're getting out. Okay.
Yeah.
And he's like, here, take a few cents and go call from a public phone. Public phone, again, throwback.
Yep.
I've
Yeah,
used
you don't
public
see those
phones.
very often anymore here.
Yeah,
You don't see
I've used
payphones.
public phones. Have you used that?
Yeah, yeah, at the mall when I called my mom to pick me up at the mall, hanging out at the mall.
But like, what freedom, right? Like, when you step out, you're just out. Like, unless
Yeah.
you call, it's like you can't be reached unless like the person physically reaches you. Like, what a time. Like, we were just so free and wild. So the bodyguard throws both of them outside. He's like, there's a party going on. Nobody's getting in without an invitation. Lola's disappointed. Ella is having a literal panic attack right now. And what happens is they step aside a little bit and they see that Stu Wolf, the lead singer of Siddhartha, is actually fighting and kind of like, getting into a physical fight with his bandmate called Steve. And Stu looks fully drunk. He just steps out of like the brownstone building and he's like, off Steve, like nobody cares about me. Everybody wants my money. Nobody really knows me. Even I don't know me. And he's like fully drunk and he's like, off Steve, don't come near me. Leave me alone. And Steve's like, yeah, fine. Off. You've like created enough trouble for us in multiple cities across the world. So he's like, fine, Steve. Steve's like, of whatever. And then Stu Wolf starts like, in a drunken haze. He is just like walking from alley to alley, absolutely like in his mind, he's fully blacked out. He's just walking around with some strength and he falls in like a heap of garbage. And Lola and Ella have been following him. They take him out from the heap of garbage and they are like so disappointed. I think that's why people say don't meet your idols, because Lola and Ella thought that he is such a spiritual being and he's such a man of the people. Like he would never, affect his talent or let his talent get stained by any after effects of alcohol. Like he would never stoop to that level. So they are kind of disappointed that this guy is like just blacked out drunk. He's an adult. Ella literally says, Lola's like, at least he's an adult between us. She's like, Ella's like, he's not an adult, he's a rock and roll star. And I'm like, this
Yeah.
guy is a man child. He's a typical man child with like alcohol issues and I think anger management issues as well. And I think it was a little dangerous for Ella and Lola to be around him, but whatever. That's the plot. So
Yeah.
they like, stand him up. Ella slaps him around. He's like, take me for a drink. I want to have a drink. And Ella like slaps him and she's like, fine, we'll take you for a drink. And they're both like dragging him like to a diner or a cafe where they can like get him coffee and he can sober up. They like, and it's pouring rain. Like we have to remember it's pouring rain and they're dragging this heavy adult man across like Soho trying to find some open diner or cafe. They finally find one, but they don't have enough money. And this drunken loser lead singer, oh, so like sensitive and intellectual and such a tortured poet. This loser, he like orders like a lot of food and he asks for like alcohol and they're like, bro, you can't do this. And then he somehow escapes from the restaurant. Now these girls are like flipping out that he somehow escaped from the men's bathroom. And they're like, now where is he? How are we gonna pay? They are like completely out of their mind. And then all of them, Stu and the girls, one of the cops who is in the diner, he kind of like intercepts them here and he's like, okay, some IDs, please. What are you guys doing? This guy is clearly drunk and he's a little too old. They're like, he's my friend. He is a student at NYU. And he's like, he's a little old to be in college. The cop is literally like, he's a little old.
Yeah.
So I think Stu Wolf is like 30 or above for sure.
You think so? Gosh, I figured they were like 20s, but yeah, that line I thought was like, but also maybe he's kind of like rode hard because he's been drinking and
Oh
I don't
yeah,
know.
he has so many issues. So anyway,
Yeah,
um,
but who knows?
yeah. So now all of them are being taken to a precinct in New York. They're being taken to the police station. And Lola finally has to like fess up her like name, address, like phone number. And she gives the phone number of her father. Her father comes to like pick them up and he's like furious, but he's like, I'm glad nothing worse happened. I'm good that, you guys are good. And Stu Wolf is just drunk. In the middle of all this drama, he's just drunk and sitting there in the police station. But then by the time the whole police station thing gets resolved, he sobers up a little bit and he's like, he tells them, okay, you guys are my saviors. You saved me. Wanna go to a party? And Lola's dad is like, yeah, I think we should go to a party. I need a drink. So they all go to the party. They have a really nice time. Apparently, Stu Wolf knows Lola's dad. His name is Callum Sepp because he's an artist, like a children's illustrator. So Stu Wolf's niece is really into the work of Lola's dad, and they talk, like all night about it. They have a really nice time, and Ella and Lola see Carla Santini over there, and they like tell her hi, but she kind of like just ignores and ducks out.
Yeah, she sees them, but she ignores them.
That was really, that was kind of really funny. I think Megan Fox played this role really well
Yeah,
without overdoing
yeah.
it. Yeah, she was just the right amount of annoying and
Mhm.
the right amount of pretty
It was
that
really good casting. Yeah,
yeah, it was,
I totally forgot that she was in the film because back then we didn't know who she was. You know, she wasn't Megan Fox. This was pre-Transformers, just a couple
yeah.
years before Transformers. So, but
And she
yeah, it was really cute.
no, I'm just saying Megan Fox has done quite a lot of work. Like she's in a lot of teen movies and like I was just like looking through her IMDb. Like I want to check out her older stuff.
You know what I have never seen? Have you seen Jennifer's Body? I've never seen it, and it's
Yeah,
supposed to be
I
like a
love
cult
it.
classic. Yeah, I wanna see
You
it.
should watch it. It's amazing. It's like so
Yeah,
good.
love it.
Why do I keep
I
watching
liked her
gory movies? I
I
don't
know,
understand.
and you say you can't handle it, and no, yeah, so we were talking about this off air. Because we were talking about Frankenstein, because you watched it first, and I basically finished it today. It was beautiful, it was great, but I forgot how gory his some of Del Toro's stuff can be. And whereas last month you were saying, "How do you, Katie, read horror?" And I don't often read gruesome stuff, but I can. I've been reading Chuck Tingle's serious horror novels, and those are pretty intense, but I can't watch it. But yeah, you can watch it and you can't read it, you know? It's funny.
Maybe I internalize things more when I read.
Yeah.
Yep. Yes. So the party is over. Ella's dad is pissed that they did this, but he's like, okay, fine. Like, I can't get that mad at you because I was also young once.
Yeah.
And okay, Lola's mom comes to know Lola's naturally grounded for the rest of her life. Ella's parents don't find out because they were out that night. So when a call went from the police station to their house, nobody picked it up. So Ella gets off safe. Her parents don't know. Even, yeah, like she gets off like easy. And I was like, well deserved. The fates should have intervened to help you out, considering you're such a good friend. You went along with such a wild ass plan.
Mm-hmm.
Despite being in a very sheltered environment, you went on with like a wild ass plan, like a girl who's never been on public transport in a bus in a major city. Like Ella just was ready to spread her wings. She just needed like a boost. She needed a delusional boost from Lola, which Ella filters through pragmatism. She's spreading her wings, but she has that groundedness, which like I think is such a nice quality in her. I really want a boyfriend like Ella.
Well, maybe
Yeah.
somebody will see this on YouTube, you know, and reach
And then
out.
they'll
There
go
you go.
read the book, and then they'll be like, I'm an Ella. Maybe
Yep.
Shaggy could be into me.
You
Let's
guys, we're on
manifest.
Instagram. Also, you can email Shaggy at girlwhatdidijustread@gmail.com. Send in your applications. She will marry for a visa, depending on the country. Depending on the country.
Oh, God.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, so it was really cute. And it had a nice ending. But then we were disappointed kind of because, after the weekend, they go back to school
Mm.
and Carla's like, "Oh, I had such a good time. Too bad you weren't there, Ella." And too bad you weren't there, Lola. And Ella
He
and Lola
basically
said, "Are you
embarrasses
kidding?"
Lola.
Yeah,
Yeah.
say, she's like, "What are you talking about, Carla? You saw us at the party. We saw you. We said, 'Hey.'" And Carla, of course, pretends it didn't happen, and everyone believes Carla pretty much, besides Sam. And because Carla doesn't know whether or not they were actually at the concert. She doesn't know that they weren't at the concert, but
Mm.
she knows that they were at the party, and she
Yeah.
lied to make them look bad and make Lola look like a liar. And then there's a whole debacle of getting the dress back into the closet. And the thing is it had been ruined, right? Well, not ruined, but it got gross and soaked and dirty. Stu had it
But
dry
luckily Stu
cleaned
got it cleaned.
for her. Yes. And so Sam got it back to the
Yeah.
closet for her
See,
for the
Stu
play.
is a loser. I fully admit Stu is a loser right now. But I think if he like goes to a little bit of therapy and like self-reflects and like gets off the alcohol, I think he can be a really decent human being. Like, I
Yeah.
think he can be like good for himself and good for others as well. Like,
I
there's
like to
potential
think that I like to think that after this that he got clean, like no drink, no drugs,
because he
and
went to
maybe
India.
just gonna say, I think he went to India and probably became some kind of guru, and then
Yeah.
is living he's back in the States, starting a cult, a la, what's his face, who I don't like, Jared Leto.
Oh,
He's Jared Leto.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, like there are a lot of villains in pop culture. Like, you'll find someone is one rendition of another person, and like it's like pop culture and like is just so derivative that sometimes you can see imitations like all over the place.
But yeah,
But
then we
yeah,
have the big show, right? That was coming up.
yes,
Sorry, go
the
ahead.
play. No,
Yeah,
no, yeah,
the
the
play.
play that's gonna happen.
Yeah. So, you know, finally Lola's admitting defeat. She's like, screw this. I'll never win against Carla Santini. And so she doesn't want to do the show. So she pretends to be sick so her mother can't send her to school since she can't do the play that night. And then because then Carla Santini would take the lead role and
Yeah.
because Carla is has a lesser role in it, but I guess she's the understudy. And then Ella comes along and she's like, look, girl, you've worked hard for this. You deserve this. You deserve to show off your talents. Do not keel over and die and let Carla Santini take the glory because that's exactly what she wants. And so Ella basically bullies Lola into, pulling up her bootstraps, getting to school and doing the play. And so everything's awesome and she does a great job. I do have to say, I like that it was a play. I don't love that I know we're not talking about the movie yet, but in the movie they made it a musical, but it wasn't My Fair Lady. It's like My Fair Lady is the musical of the play Pygmalion. I know in the book, they just did a modernized version of it, takes place in New York City. So instead of it being like in the play, a woman is it actually, I haven't read the play. I think we covered it in school back in the day. Anyway, so it's a play. I wish that they would have kept it a play for the movie, but obviously she does a great job and everything's happy. And right. I mean, happy ending. Oh, and then Carla kind of, at least in the book, they kind of have an understanding and not a friendship, but
they are
not a
kind of
rivalry.
Carla is kind of admitting that, if we work together, we could really be a force to be reckoned with. But I think Carla understands that she has a turf, and maybe Lola can also have a turf without Carla being demoted to the second position. I think Carla just realizes that I can rule the high school anyway. I literally rule the high school, but I will just not unnecessarily act out as a teenager. I feel there's something similar about Lola and Carla Santini in the sense that Lola acts out because she thinks she's trying to do something good or something great. So she acts out as a teenager in that manner, and Carla acts out of a path of meanness. And I think by the end of this book, she kind of realizes that you don't always need to be malicious to be number one. You can be evil, but you can also be benevolent and you can be number one. She's like, I'm gonna define my turf like that. So I like that fact as well, that they act more mature than adults do right now.
Yeah, it was cute. It was a very nice ending, and I think it's a good read for maybe middle school through younger high school for sure. Definitely a good YA novel. It was funny. It was really funny. There were a lot of good lines in the book. I wish that they would have. Oh, I love it. You have it. You got the hard copy. Look at you.
Such a battered book. But there are so many amazing lines, literally laugh out loud moments. I could not stop giggling at the way they keep talking about so many cute things. Look at this. When Siddhartha, the band, breaks up, Lola, how dramatic she's being. She's like, after all, the death of a president isn't half as devastating as the death of a band like Siddhartha. And because she was in mourning, she had gone into her goth emo mode. So I stared at the mirror. The black eyeshadow made me look like a tragic Greek queen who had just discovered that she had married her son or eaten her own baby or something like that.
I know. And the thing is I was into mythology and stuff like that. So as a young person, so I got that, but I think it's hilarious because because there's a majority of the kids back then that age and now I do not think that they would understand those lines. So that's why I liked it. But then, as a kid, if my kid reads it, she's well read and things like that, but there might be a few things over her head. But yeah, there were a lot of really good, what is it? The marrying the son. Oh my gosh. That's hilarious. Oedipus complex.
Yeah.
That was good.
And it's so, this band Siddhartha, they are so basic. Their hit song is called Everything Hurts. how teenage angsty is that? And there's also like lyrics like no more, no more. Can we have some more? Everything hurts.
And she thought he was such a poet for writing
He
those
was the
lyrics.
Shakespeare. He's a
I
Shakespeare of the
know.
21st century.
Shakespeare. Yep. That's
He's a bard.
hilarious.
She's just like, and also Lola has such a full life, like because her, I think in a way, her mom Karen, I think she's doing a fabulous job at parenting Lola because she gives Lola her freedom to like be expressive and to be herself, but she is also like Karen in some way is how I think a millennial would try to parent their kid by like, I mean, I don't know. She like, how do I explain it? Like Karen encourages her to like take her bike and ride it and go to meet her friend, and she like, lets her have her music, and she lets it blare a little bit till the midnight, and she gives that, I think she gives a good direction to Lola's life. Like, don't become an adult too soon, like enjoy your childhood. And of course, I'm a mom, my job is to like ensure that you're safe. And her mom is also very intuitive. Like Lola says that my mom is so intuitive, she can look at my face and know that I'm going to get my periods. I'm like, whoa, what an intuitive mom.
She's
When,
an artist, so
yeah, she's a potter. She has
Mhm.
that artistic soul. And the funny thing about this book is also that Lola's like critical of her parents. Of course, she gives them a lot of grace and she like tries to humble herself. She thinks of her mom as like very different from her. Like, she's kind of like, whether I'll grow up to become like my mom. And and I think she's like a little against that idea because her mom is like, I think, good cop, bad cop. So her mom is the one disciplining, parenting every day. And Lola feels that, like, oh, I'm so different from my mom. My mom is like ruining my life. She's like totally making my life hell. I'm going to protest like Gandhi till like she budges to my request. I mean, yeah, I don't even know what to call it besides cute. The fact that even the way they show a family and like single parenthood and how wholesome it can be and how good it can be. And the fact that, strong personalities like Lola uh have such like groundedness within their family. It's like so cute to read. I think they don't show these things in teen movies and like shows anymore.
I've been trying to read and I will fall asleep within 5 minutes. I mean, usually at my reading time on my tablets at night and I listen to audiobooks in the car. But now the commute's given me more time to listen to audiobooks. So I had started reading the book and I told you I found the audiobook. And again, another one where I'm so glad I found the audiobook because the narrator was perfection. I've had that before where I've had some really good narrators for some books and then some not so great for the same book. Anyway, this woman who narrates this audiobook, phenomenal and just hilarious and just nails every line. I wonder if the author chose this woman to do the book. And the woman, like, she does all the voices and everything, but just the voice that she gives to Lola. I wonder if Lindsay Lohan listened to it before doing the role. Not that she copied it, but I think Lindsay Lohan, now having
I think it's
listened to the audiobook and
definitely,
then watched the movie again, I think
yeah,
that they nailed that voice, both the
yeah.
narrator and Lindsay Lohan. And nailed the not just like how she sounds, but her just whole aura, her vibe, her being, Anyway, so I
There's
highly
this
recommend the audiobook.
There's this one quote that I wanted to mention, which the author of this book is Diane Sheldon. She's a British author. She's prolific in her writing. She's written children's books, in YA books, just like so much literature. Probably written more than 100 books, I think. I was going through her website. Her website is so cute. We'll put it in the show notes so that you
Yeah,
can just
I'll
go and
make a note
see.
of that.
It's like such an old-timey Tumblr era website. I mean, it's just, you just have to go and see. Diane Sheldon, she gave this quote as to how she came up with the name of the book. So she says, my daughter was grumbling a bit about her sister, who was a teenager. She said, if I ever write a book about my sister, I'm going to call it Confessions of a Teenage Drama Queen, said my daughter. I thought about it as one of the best titles ever. So I started with the title with no idea at all of where the story would be. As it turned out, the book has nothing to do with my daughter or her sister, but goes back to my high school years and my best friend. So Diane Sheldon has had like a full life. She's had a wild past,
Oh,
a
this is
wild fun
cute.
past.
Yeah, for sure. I wish we got a little bit. Now I'm interested to hear some more of her like personal stories. But it was funny because when you showed me the website and showed me this, I didn't know
She
that she was English.
But I noticed she was English because I've written down some things that she says. Like she says crisps instead of chips.
I think they changed that for the audiobook then because I don't remember
Oh, yeah,
that.
this is like this edition is 2011. Yeah,
Huh.
she says crisps instead of chips. And do you guys call it dinner or supper?
Both. In the Midwest, people call it supper. I call it dinner. Wait a second. I bet you, okay, just like Harry Potter, they changed some things for us and the titles of like, instead of the Philosopher's Stone, it's the Sorcerer's Stone. I bet you have the British version of the
Yeah,
book.
I have the UK version. It says UK
Yeah.
only.
They probably changed a couple of the words. But then that's funny that she wanted to write a book about a teenage girl in New York City, New Jersey, just versus,
London.
UK.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So until now, we were speaking about like intimate human to human, women to women relationships, which are so important. And yeah, they also like help you with like longevity of your health. So have more women friends, please. Apparently, I think Jane Fonda, yes, Jane Fonda in her 80s, she says women relationships, they have like helped her go through obstacles and challenges and joys and sorrows that she has like never experienced anything like that. So yeah, let's segue now to something which is not a very intimate relationship, but it can be called a sort of an intimate relationship, but a little toxic. We call it parasocial relationships. Now, what are parasocial relationships? Let's just say we can look at parasocial relationships as like a one sided imaginary bond that you have with a public figure. And these public figures are generally, I would say, artists or intellectuals or scholars or business person, whoever is your idol. You have like a one sided imaginary bond with that public figure or even a fictional character sometimes. And that one sidedness of that relationship, it can feel very intimate to the person experiencing it. However, that public figure is totally unaware of your existence, basically. And this is what is fan culture. This is what fandoms are about. This is what stan culture is. This is what shipping celebrities is. And yeah, these are all parasocial relationships. I mean, I am a Swiftie, but am I that much of a Swiftie? I don't think so. I think when like I think about like my relationship with like the whole celebrity culture, it's like I enjoy it in the moment. Like I enjoy pop culture in the moment, but like I let go of it as quickly as the next thing comes. So I think because of that, I have not been able to like be obsessed with one thing. Like I'll just take a very simple example of like childhood. Twilight. Okay. I mean, I read Twilight when I was 13. I think I shouldn't have read it when I was 13. I think it's a more
And I read it when I was 23.
yeah, it's a more 15 book, 15 to 16 book.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and come on, everyone who knows about Twilight knows about the relationship of Bella and Edward, the characters, and Kristen Stewart and Rob Pattinson, who are the public figures, the actors who play these characters. And let me tell you, 2012 was when the last movie in the Twilight saga came out. And oh my god, people were hyperventilating about them being together, not being together, people being on Kristen's side, like she did something to cause the breakup, people being on Rob's side, like, oh, we know such specific, intimate, minute details of someone else's life, which will barely have a personal impact on our own. Maybe the media that they produce, like the movies that they are in, maybe we'll like, okay, we can feel some sort of validation through the characters that they play, through their artistry. But knowing something this intensely private, like, it's weird. And I understand that. I think if this information is given to you constantly about someone's like real intimate life and the details and the private, everything that's like behind closed doors or even around closed doors, I think this is what causes the one-sidedness. It feels like I know so much about them, I know them. Like, because I know so much about them, I know them. And I mean, I think taken to the extreme, it's scary. Like, I think recently I mean, fan culture has just generally been crazy. Paparazzi culture has like fueled fan culture to its toxicity because, like, through paps was how, at least during the 2000s, the whole paparazzi culture was how you would like get information as to what Lindsay Lohan is doing, or
Yeah.
what Paris Hilton is doing, or is Britney having a breakdown? Is Britney okay? I mean,
Yeah.
like, as wholesome and cute as that era was, let's say that era was highly toxic as well.
I think
Diet
that was
culture.
the height of the worst of it was
I think, yeah,
the
that was when
2000s and 2010s.
that's when the bubble burst, I think. It's
Yeah.
like
Well,
it
at
just
least in the
became.
States, I think it was. Because caveat, I think it's still worse in Britain. I think because with their daily rags and like the Daily Mail, I think the British are obsessed with dirt and gossip on their celebrities. I think that aren't they still they're still having issues with like there are actors and performers that have sued like the Daily Mail, for example, for leaking stuff or making up rumors. I don't know. So I don't know. You're closer to that than I am. I'm not sure if you get any of their social media,
No, I'm trying to think
but yeah.
about like Indian paparazzi culture because we have Bollywood. People are crazy about Bollywood. I mean, Shah Rukh Khan, Salman Khan, Shwarya Rai, people go crazy. So over here, I have seen the parasocial relationships are like super intense, where, fans think that this actor is like my brother. I mean, I don't know how to like, they kind of like project what kind of a relationship they would want from a figure like this. But I don't think the paparazzi culture is crazy. And it's not crazy because I think everything is out on social media anyway. So, like, what will you photograph if I will have a photo shoot in my house and put it up on Instagram before you can take a shot of me outside
Yeah.
on the streets. So I think I don't think there's like a crazy paparazzi culture over here. Also, I think especially a little before, like in my parents' Gen X generation, I think actors and actresses and like celebrities, they were almost looked upon as like gods, as like deities. So they were like really respected, and it's like how you can get obsessed with God as well.
Yeah. But I think it's been like that for years. I think it started with Hollywood. I mean, people have the gossip rags and things, but they were treated like deities. I really feel, especially in the
Yeah. Old
1930s,
Hollywood.
the 1920s, 1930s, even back to the earlier 1900s with the silent films.
I think that's when they said it was like the golden age of Hollywood, when they were treated like deities, literally.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that was like 1937 was like the golden that mid to late 30s right before like the war was the golden age of Hollywood, but that's what started it was Hollywood and these parasocial relationships. People would read about their favorite stars and put them on their walls. A good example of this is one of my favorite films, Singing in the Rain. I don't know if you've ever seen it with Debbie Reynolds and Gene Kelly. Gene Kelly is like the hottest star of the silent pictures. The movie was made in the 50s, but it takes place in the 1920s, right before talking pictures come. It's interesting. That whole you know, they share so much of their lives, or there's so much of their lives are shared, and so we feel like we know them, but we really don't. Obviously, we like the book a lot. I mean, it was a fun blast from the past, and I would say, obviously, either very easy read, right? I mean, how many pages was it? Because I ended up listening to it.
Okay, this is 300 pages, but like, look at the font. It's so big.
Yeah, because my audiobook was only a little over 3 hours long, which is not long compared to like now I'm listening to one that's over 10 hours long.
I think it's a very brief. It's very lyrical in its structure because when you read, you never think like, oh, this is a boring part. It's like it flows very
It
well,
is.
the
And
entire
there's some
book.
really funny lines in there. And I will say that the books are kind of hard to find. Like I couldn't find the book with my library, even on Kindle, and I couldn't find the audiobook on there, but Audible has the audiobook. Other audiobook platforms have it. And then if you have Spotify Premium also has the audiobook. It's such a fun listen. You have to listen to it. And like I said, it's like 3 hours. It is so funny. So I highly recommend that. Do you
Also,
want
if
to?
anyone needs like a self-esteem boost, just read it. Like it's so brief. If you're like, oh my god, my boss screamed at me today and I feel depressed because of it, read this book.
Yes,
You will,
definitely.
yeah, read this book. I mean, it'll just fill your heart in the best way possible. And today, honestly, all the content in Instagram or TikTok or anywhere on the internet couldn't like actually, yeah, make my heart shine the way this tiny book did.
The movie was a lot of fun to watch. I mean, if you don't have to read the book. I think you should, but the movie was fun. Again, the Lohan movies of that era, I was obsessed with. I loved Lindsay Lohan so much. Right before this movie, she did Freaky Friday. So that was 2003. She did this in 2004. I also recommend watching.
She did Mean Girls
What was
in
it?
2006. Then
Yeah. What was it? The one with Chris Pine? Oh, Just My
Just
Luck,
My
I
Luck.
think. Let's see. I love that movie. It is so cute. Plus, Chris Pine is so hot. What else was she been in? Lots of stuff. Yeah, all those movies were just like so much fun. That was 2006.
Yeah. And
Let me
I'm
just pull
so
them up
glad
real
that
quick.
the Lohanescence is upon us. I just want
Yes.
her
Oh
to
my gosh,
begin like,
Herbie Fully Loaded was
yes,
also was
Herbie is
like
an
the
amazing
year.
movie.
Was it the year after this? Yeah, the year after. Oh my, she did a lot within a couple of years. Wow. And I think, what is it? You said all her movies are on Disney now, or most of them are
Yeah,
on Disney.
most of them of that era, all of them are on Disney. It's okay. We are going to spam our Instagram a lot. Like we have so much fashion stuff to put up,
Oh,
so much movie stuff
and
to put up.
well, this was so much fun. Thank you so much again. Is there anything else you want to add before we close it out?
Well, that's a good wrap on today's deep dive on teenage drama and friendship
Yes.
politics and just unlocking our core memory chaos that shaped us.
And finally,
Like
a
what?
light read.
Yeah, and such a fun episode. Like such a fun episode talking about all the frilly and frothy. It's like ice spice and everything nice.
Yes, I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. And you guys know where to find us here on Instagram. We're also Girl What's It I Just Read. We, trying to do these monthly. Also, just leave us comments, nice things or suggestions. We try to theme the different months. And yeah, and then Shaggy does an amazing job on our Instagram. So I
Yeah.
do the video content, but she actually does a lot more. She posts throughout the month. I post it until I'm out of content. And then she posts all the fun, like other reels and Instagram, like memes and things having to do with whatever our book theme is. So I
Yeah, and
appreciate
I
it.
have
But
so much posting to do on Y2K stuff. Oh, that's why I
yes,
love this themes like this month's book as well, because it's like it has so much tangential culture to it, and you can like learn all about all of those tangential elements as well. Like one of the tangential
yeah.
element being that like today I like really dressed up as like as much as I could like a character of Confessions of a Teenage Drama Queen. And see, I'm trying to bring this into trend where all your breakouts, you just like slap glitter on it. Yeah. So if you want this kind of confidence,
gosh,
please read this book and help me make this a trend.
Anyway, thank you guys so much for listening. And like I said, check us out on Instagram here. Maybe we'll do TikTok one day, but we really appreciate you all and have a good one. See you next time.